Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis. As always, we're excited to share with you. Robin, are you ready to do this, sir?
I'm ready, sir. Always a pleasure, man.
Indeed, it is. So, we are in the first quarter of the new year, and we've got an exciting topic. We've gone through the Big Life acronym. We've kicked around some ideas that you and I want to learn and implement ourselves. And we keep coming back to growth and leadership and growth. So, we decided to start right here today or continue with growth, this idea of wanting to be better, to advance, to improve. And I have an idea, but I don't want to make an assumption. Robin, I want to be better this year. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And I'm sure you want the same.
Yes, sir, without a doubt. 100%. And I'm sure that our listeners want the same thing.
Now, here's what I have learned. My desire to be better is always high, right? My implementation or the realization of better, of growth, because of this thing called life, is not always at 100%, or sometimes it's not even at 10%. And so I know we're going to look at maybe some of those reasons that Robin and Neal and maybe our audience have for not achieving growth, not experiencing the big life all the time. And then maybe some of those things that might be derailing us, because as much as we love the theory and the ideas, the Big Life Podcast is all about implementation, execution, seeing a tangible benefit and difference in our lives. So I know Robin and I are going to be sharing some of our experiences in this episode, but we want you in the chat, in the comments. Make sure you let us know what your experiences have been when it comes to growth, when it comes to those benefits, those maybe challenges that you had that have hindered you from growing into the person that you want to be in every area of your life, whether that's personal, financial, professional, or maybe even spiritually. You know, Robin and I are here for that. So, Robin, some of the content that we have here, much of the content is going to be coming from John's book. I mean, Dr. John Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And so we're going to be talking about intentionality, right?
The
And I
law
think
of
that
intention.
intentionality is so important. The law of intentionality is so important because growth does not happen just happenstance by chance. One of my friends who is a mentor of mine, he would say, aging is guaranteed, growth is not, right? And
So
I
good.
think that we get stuck there. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these misconceptions or these myths about growth and development and improvement as we look at this law of intentionality. I would like for you to take it away from me, sir.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to jump there. I want to jump right to the bottom line today for our listeners, because we've talked about growth before. We've talked about being intentional before. So we've had both subjects. What we're going to be actually sharing today is to be intentional about your growth, right? So growth doesn't just happen. And so one of the things that we are suggesting that we do is we have to become very intentional about it. You know, Neal, I looked into this, but then became very intentional. I've shared with our listeners before about the time when I was in the Amway business, and they had a training system that they had set up because they understood the goal for them was to help people like me to do well. If I did well, then it also benefited the company, right? It's a great little thing for you to consider if you're a business owner, if you're a leader. The more you can help your team members, your people to grow, is the more it's going to also help your company to grow, right? Sometimes as business owners, I held back with that. I
Mm.
was investing in my growth, but I wasn't investing so much in others' growth. And then I realized that, in fact, I heard our good friend John Maxwell say, I would rather invest in people and they leave than not invest in them and they stay. Right. But the reason I share this quick little story with you is because I became intentional. They made available to us to get information every week that we could play and listen to. They made
Hold on,
books.
Robert. Wait. So I don't want to date you, but I can't miss this. You gave it to me on a silver platter. What were you listening? So when you say they made it available for you to listen, I'm sure it wasn't a podcast.
You're right. It's, they were cassette tapes, sir. Now, a lot of our listeners won't even know what that is, Neal. But yes, there were cassette tapes that had reels that sometimes I played them so much they actually broke and tore, and you couldn't listen to it again anymore. But the concept was that you have people that are sharing principles, kind of like what we're doing on this podcast, and many others do on podcasts as well. So the similar concept there, and we had those tapes, and then we had recommended books that I signed up for the book of the month club, and we had seminars that we could participate in, and we had conferences. So they kind of had the training system set up that one could just sort of enroll and commit to.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started doing that, I started seeing the benefit of it. But after leaving Amway, what I want to share with you, and one day you and I, Neal, I know we're going to be talking about the networking and the power of relationships and so on. Somebody invited me after I left Amway, and now I'm hungering for, growth opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
which it was automatically plugged in. And then when I stepped away, it kind of went away. Right. And so somebody, a friend of mine actually, asked me if I had heard of John Maxwell. And I heard
And your
about him.
answer was?
I had heard about him. Yes. So at that time, I had heard, he actually came and spoke to an Amway conference that I had been to. And, a side note that I would share with you, by the way, is for those of you who are considering speaking, I still remember this was years ago, years before this person asked me if I knew him. And I'd only heard him speak once. And I still remember what he spoke about. And this was years later. Isn't that powerful? Isn't that what we want? We want to speak in such a way that it's so impactful that people actually remember what it is that we shared. I remembered, and I remember just I had good feelings about this gentleman, and he invited me to a conference that became that yearly conference called Catalyst that I had mentioned to you, and that's where I really started to get acclimated with John Maxwell. But my point to you is that when I went to that conference, I recognized that this is something that could take the place of what I was getting through the Amway business. This was an annual conference. And at this conference, they have a number of different speakers that we get exposed to, and a number of books that we get exposed to. And so it became a part of my growth plan. And what we're suggesting to our listeners today is if you're intentional about growing, you need to have a growth plan. You have to have a plan for your growth. So I said, I got to the bottom line before we even talked about some of these myths, because I just wanted to make you aware as our listeners that we've spoke about both of these topics before, but we're now putting them together. So the suggestion here is, if you don't have a growth plan, to get a growth plan. And so there are some things that can keep us from that. As Neal mentioned, one of the things that can keep us from that is we assume that we'll automatically grow.
That's that assumption gap, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And yes, while we can grow, the reality is that it's not automatic. We think that maybe we leave school, as if we continue just going along with life, that we're going to grow. But the reality is, just ask, that might be a rude question to ask. And I don't mean to be rude, but sometimes we have to be blunt with ourselves, right? Where has that gotten me?
So hold on. So you remind me of Dr. Phil. And so the whole question is, so how's that working out for you?
Okay.
Right? And so one thing you talk about, we don't want to assume that growth is going to happen, that we're going to be better. One of my real estate mentors and coaches reminded me that there are people who have been in the industry for 20 years, but they have 1 year of experience, meaning that they have not grown from year to year. That once that calendar page turns and the new year turns, they go right back to doing the same thing they've always done, because it was Well, I assume that this year is going to be the same as last year. Whereas you might have someone just in the real estate industry who has become serious about learning, about diving in, building networks, connecting with mentors and coaches. And in 5 years' time, they might have 10 or 15 years worth of experience because they were intentional, as you've mentioned. So I know that that assumption gap is a very real thing. And here's the hardest part about the assumption that I assume that I will automatically grow is that it requires nothing of us. Right? It doesn't require me to do anything other than, oh yeah, I'll be better
Live.
tomorrow than I am today.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's a dangerous thing.
Yes, sir. Right on. And I'm sure that's not our listeners. Our listeners are too smart for that. But maybe you know that person that you work with or your family member. Maybe you need to share this with them. You know what I mean?
There we go. Absolutely. So Robin, if you're okay, I would like to jump to one of these second
Yes, please.
myths or misconceptions, the knowledge gap. I don't know how to grow. Go ahead and share some of that because I know at one point I'm like, if we're talking about the industry or even as a new dad or a husband, I'm coming in, I'm like, I don't even know how to get better, right? I don't know how to grow. First, how do we acknowledge that knowledge gap of the I don't know how to grow? And then what do we do about it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I didn't know either. I just kind of jumped in. And I think that's what we need to do when it comes to growth is just begin. There is when I started out, I really did not have a clue. I just wanted more. I wanted more. And they were saying, if you want more, this is what you got to do. And so I didn't have it all worked out. So it's a myth to think that you have to know it all. I didn't have a growth plan. I'm suggesting to you today that you need a growth plan. I have a
But that's
growth
it.
plan
But that's because
today.
you know you didn't have one, and so you're just helping us get further along.
Exactly. And so don't let that stop you. It's also a gap that causes us to not move forward in our growth. You don't have to know how to grow and you just step into it. You just start somewhere. Start today. And as you start, then you and the other thing that I would say is stick with it. Plan to have a plan for growth for at least a year. Give yourself time to actually grow. So yes, that's what I would share, Neal.
So Robin, you talking about people not knowing where to start.
Yeah.
So Jim Rohn would always say there are two places to start. Either start from the beginning or start from where you are, right? So it doesn't matter. Either start from the beginning. If you're reading a book, maybe you should start from the beginning, right? If you're on this growth plan and wanted to implement a growth plan and on this journey about being intentional about your growth, just start where you are. I mean, you're listening to us. Fantastic place to start. Maybe you're going to hear us talk about Dr. John Maxwell. Then you're going to say, well, let me see who this guy is. That might be your next step. Then you might attend a conference or be a part of a mastermind group or get some type of coach, right? So just start from where you are. That's a fantastic place. But Robin, there
Yes.
is another misconception, and that is, yes, I will start from where I am, but it's not the right time. And that's that timing gap because we know time is our most valuable asset. So, you all, yes, I believe I'm going to start, but I'm going to wait until the kids graduate. And then I'm going to wait until I get a raise at work or a promotion. And then I'm going to wait. And then I'm going to wait. Now is not the right time for me to begin growing. Go ahead, give it to me, sir.
Yes, no, you said it. I don't know nothing more. Listeners, nothing more needs to be said about that. The time is now. If we wait, there is the law of diminishing
Return.
return is that the longer we wait to actually start something is
Yeah.
the greater the percentage that we will never even get that done. It's the law of diminishing intent. The more we wait is the less chance we have of actually doing it.
Yeah.
And
And
so
and so then that's going to take us many times we're saying now is not the time. And you mentioned this when you started, you just jumped in, didn't know what was right or wrong. And in 2024, 25, 26, whenever you are listening to this, here's one I believe that has caused us to be more inactive and more reluctant to do anything. And that's the mistake gap. I'm afraid of making mistakes, that I cannot be intentional about my growth because I don't want to make a mistake. I mean, what are my family and friends going to say? What are the strangers who are on my Instagram, even though they'll never see it because I only post my highlights in life, right? What if someone sees me make a mistake? Worse yet, what if I know that I have failed? I don't think I can handle that. And so how can I get over that misconception, that idea that making mistakes is a bad thing?
Yeah, again, it's just do it. I would encourage our listeners to listen to our episode where we talked about the F in the life, the big life acronym, where we talked about the formula for success is to test, to fail, to learn, to improve, and to re-enter. And that's the way that it goes with growth as well, is that we're not going to have it. We're not going to be the best. We're not going to have it all figured out. And the only way that we're actually going to move forward and grow is by stepping into it. Test, step out there. So I think that's the answer right there, Neal. And we did a good job on that episode. I would encourage our listeners to go back when you're done with this one and listen to that one.
So Robin, this is where I have done a great job fooling everyone who's watching me from a distance. And that is because when they look at the things I've done professionally or personally, they will see that Neal just wins. I win, 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 win from the outside perspective, right? But what they are not seeing is that sandwiched between my win on a Monday and my win on a Wednesday are 7 failures, right? And I have come to embrace it. Now, that does not mean I enjoy it, but I have come to embrace the mistakes that I make, whether it's on the podcast and the formatting. We talked about at the end of our last episode how you and we get to have conversations off camera. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's not always by design. Sometimes it's because Robin and I can't figure out how to get our technology to work and cooperate with us. So instead of us fussing and fighting about it, we just embrace our mistakes and then we just come back and learn. And right, you talk about that formula for success, and then we just win as book ends. So that whole idea of being afraid of making mistakes. One of my very close friends, she's in real estate, and she says, so she has 2 young children, and she always reminds herself, and she reminds me on a big whiteboard in her office, is that her children's futures are bigger, that are more important than any mistakes that she can make or any fears that she has, right? And so for me, I know I have big life goals, big life dreams, and those goals, dreams, the impact that I want to have are bigger, are more important than any mistake that I can make or any fears that I might have. So I know it sounds simplistic, and it is not, ladies and gentlemen. We will be the first two to admit that, but it is that important for you to embrace the mistakes and to understand that it's going to be a part of that. In fact, in the show notes, we're going to have a link for the episode where we're talking about the formula for success. So make sure you all check that out after you finish listening here. Now this one goes hand in hand with that mistake gap. It is the perfection gap. I have to find the best way before I start, Robin. I have to have it all figured out to ensure I don't make a mistake. I need to find the best way before I start. What are you telling me?
The common thing here that we find is that we just need to start. The common thing here is that we just need to move forward. The law of diminishing effects comes into play as we wait to have it all together. Have I done it, Neal? I think about years ago when I didn't have a website and I was trying to get a website together. I wanted to try and get all the information on the website before I even thought about launching the website, and that's so crazy. And the truth is there's so many things changing with those things. You'll never have it all together because by the time you get to where you've understand it, they've made changes to it.
Yeah.
And the process and the system and the potential and so on. And it's the same with our growth. Don't wait to get it all together. You don't have to have the right plan. You just need to start. And that's kind of why I went to the bottom line and said we have to be intentional about moving forward in our growth because it will not happen and we cannot allow perfection or any of the gaps that we are talked about today to get in the way of us actually stepping into it. We're talking about, we're here at the new year, and as we make this recording, we're at the new year, and I'm sure you all have goals that you've set for this year. And the reason for setting goals, the main reason, if you'd allow me to say this, the main reason for setting goals is to become the person capable of achieving them.
Yes, sir.
So you and I are the ones that achieve the goal. And we achieve the goal by becoming capable, becoming the person that is capable of achieving those goals. And that happens through growth. And so we have to be intentional. It doesn't just happen automatic. So that's one of the reasons why we're having this here right now. We're recording it at the beginning of the year. You might be listening to it at a different time, and it can still be helpful to you. But if you're listening to it when it comes out, you're at the beginning of the year, and we're suggesting that you have goals to make. You have goals that you have set. And in order to achieve those goals, you have to be intentional about your growth.
So we have a few more misconceptions just to cover here, but this one, the inspiration gap. Robin, I don't feel like doing it. And this is where I'm going to say, if I only did the things that I felt like doing, if I only improved on the days I felt like improving, I would be nowhere. I would tell you all that emotionally, relationally, I would probably be a 6-year-old right now. If I only grew, if I only improved when I felt like doing it. And so that one has been a big differentiator for me. And so whether it was my training from a young age or my dad being a Navy man, a sailor, saying, son, men, and now no disrespect to anyone else, but he says men do what have to be done when it has to be done, regardless of feeling like it or not, right? And so for me, that has been something, my idea, I want to be the man that my dad could be proud of. I want to make sure, we talked about legacy before, so I wanted to make sure I did what needed to be done, what had to be done, when it had to be done, even when I didn't feel like it. So that whole idea, but I don't feel like it. Okay, you cannot feel like it and still get it done. And my dad would say that all the time. And he would say, son, you don't have to feel like it. I just need you to do it. And guess what? It would get done. And now I'm appreciative and grateful for that whole idea, so that I didn't fall into that. I need the inspiration. I need to want to do it in order to get it done. Anything there,
Yeah.
Robin?
Yeah, I think we just need to be reminded of that. I think our listeners get that. I remember, I don't know if, Neal, I'm dating myself possibly, or maybe this one is still going on. But, I remember growing up as kids, we used to have that little song, nursery rhyme that we would say, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Do they still have that, Neal?
We still got it. We might not sing it, but I might be old too. But yeah, it's still a thing.
The point there is that we do control our emotions. You can't help but go through that. He goes on to say, if you stomp your feet, if you have, stomp your feet, if you're happy and you know it. And so the point there is that, yes, we act ourselves to, our emotions to follow. So if we want to be happy, then we act happy. We take the step, and the emotions follow. And so, yes, if we don't feel motivated, well, step into it anyway. And as you step into it, you'll get motivated. And that's the idea. Yeah. So, yes, sir.
So real quick, that reminds me, one of my college coaches said, if you don't feel like doing it, do it until you feel like doing it. Right?
Yeah.
So if you don't feel like doing it, do it until you feel like doing it, and then you'll be like, all right, fine. Like, you're already in it then, Robin. So whenever coach
Neal,
would tell us that, it would be something ridiculous.
that's why I'm saying we just need to be reminded. We know it. We've all, it's like walking, right? We don't feel like getting up and go walk, but when we get up and go do the walk, we feel really good about doing the walk. We feel like doing it even more,
Well,
and
thanks a
so
lot
on.
for so you just hit me right now, Robin. So as soon as we're done recording, I'm about to get up there and walk, because I didn't feel like walking, and now I'm like, man, look, that's that God wink, him telling me, boy, you need to get up there and stretch your legs a little bit.
But
Okay,
yeah, hey,
so
come on now. I know you're a consistent walker, but I get
yeah,
you.
so here's the one that is the thief of joy. Right. And this is the one, if we aren't careful, I know that this is that insidious one. the one that comes in and can not only derail our growth, but can derail our entire life. And that is the comparison gap. Robin,
Yeah. Yeah.
others are better than I am.
I've
And so
done
here's
it.
the next thing is others are better than I am. So why even try? Others
Right.
are better than I am. So go do nothing. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, no, I've done it myself. There are people that look at me and feel that way, like, yeah, you can do it, man, because you got this and you got that. But the reality is, they come back to the B in our acronym, there's only one you. There's nobody else that can take your spot. There's no copy. And if we don't get you, the world misses out. So we shouldn't be comparing ourselves with others because they can't do us, and we shouldn't try to do them. And the reality is that we bring something that others don't bring to this world.
Absolutely.
So come on now, put on your shoes and let's get going. We
Yeah,
need you. We need you.
absolutely.
I'm saying that jokingly, but that's the reality. There's nobody that can do you. There's nobody else that can do you. And so don't be comparing. We need you. And we want you to bring who you are because nobody else can. Neal, I said it enough. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, so this next one. Now, there's this expectation gap, and this is the one that I believe stops growth, stops intentional growth right before we start to reap those benefits, right? Because it's the expectation gap says, I thought it would be easier than this. And we typically hit this or we find this misconception when we're in the middle of growth. When
Yeah.
we're getting better, we haven't attained or achieved, but we're not where we were. And now we've been met with some expectation. This is the idea of us lifting weights or walking and exercising. And now we're starting to feel the burn and we're having the soreness in our muscles and we don't feel like doing it. And now we're going to say, well, I thought it would be easier. I see some results, but is it worth it? And then our mind, who's always seeking pleasure and comfort, is going to say, well, if it was really that big, really that important, it should have been easier than this. And so this is the one that I have to make sure that I temper in my life, that expectation gap. And I know you and I have had conversations, whether it's writing a book or trying to be ambitious in other areas of my life, where I'm like, Robin, man, this thing is hard. I thought it was going to be easier than this. And then it goes back to, well, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Just stick with it, and not tongue in cheek, but there is some truth to that, right? So the whole idea that I thought it would be easier than this, why should I continue to be intentional about growing? I think it's a question that many of us who are on this growth journey, who are seeking to live a big life, it's a question that we're going to find ourselves asking, or a statement that we're going to find ourselves saying maybe more than we would like to admit.
Yeah, I agree. And the simplicity is that everything worthwhile in life is uphill, and it's uphill all the way. And so it's not easy. I have sometimes, family members say to me, like, I don't want to think. Right? Thinking is hard, Neal. And so as we grow, it's going to entail thinking. It's going to entail reflection. It's going to entail thinking through things. It's going to entail thinking about things about ourselves, getting an awareness of who we are and therefore where we need to grow and what we need to do in order to grow and so on, right? It's going to take thinking. That in of itself is hard. And so the expectation I think that we want to set for our listeners, and I'm not saying anything new to you, actually. It's more just understanding that in growth, I'm saying that to our listeners because our listeners know this, because this is life. Life is hard, right? Anything worthwhile is uphill. Anything
Robin, can
worthwhile is
and
hard.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but would you remind us of that again? Because I think that we look around and we're seeking the easy. And even though we know it's not easy, we're still wanting it, and we're wanting it to be a little bit easier. And so we find ourselves getting off track. We find ourselves being lured by the promise of the magic diet pill or the lotto or something else so that we don't have to do that. But would you just remind us how easy life is, sir?
Man, I don't know about you folks, but it hasn't been easy for me, right? If you really stop and think about it, it hasn't been easy for you either. There are things that coming the way. There are things that we have to do. Just think about any goal that you have achieved. It came, yeah, I'm willing to bet. And this might not be 100% right all the time, right? There might be some things that good fortune. But if you think about it, most things that we have achieved in our life have come through time and effort. I like the way John Maxwell says it. He says everything in worthwhile in life is uphill, and he points up as I'm pointing right now. Those of you who are seeing me will see that, but those who are listening, I'm pointing up into the sky here. And as I say that, everything worthwhile is uphill. And he goes on to say it's uphill all the way. But then another part of that, which I don't quote a lot, which he says, is that most of us we want to coast in life, and we can't coast uphill. The reality is that the only way that coasting goes is downhill. And so if we want the uphill life, we're going to have to be intentional. We're going to have struggle. It's not going to be easy to go uphill. And the beautiful thing about that I would say, Neal, is that it's the same for all of us, right? The only way anybody goes uphill is through effort and intention and putting in the hard work. And so that's what we're seeing is growth is going to take that as well.
So we're not going to leave you all there. I want to just read something that Dr. John Maxwell shared. And it is, the sooner you make the transition to becoming intentional about personal growth, the better it will be for you, because growth compounds and accelerates if you remain intentional about it. And so just really quickly, there are 4 ways for us as individuals, for leaders, personal, professional, that we can make the change from the whole idea of being accidental to intentional about growth. Is ask the big question now. And that big question is, where do you want to go? I think that's an important question. Now, some of us have never asked the question because we didn't think that we were in a position or we had the power to change where we want to go. Robin is a big believer in this, and that is to do it now. So ask the question, where do you want to go? Do it now, face the fear factor, and then change from accidental to intentional growth. And that's going to be where we start taking action today. Robin has encouraged us to have a growth plan to make sure that we don't put things off. That could be, make sure you subscribe to the Big Life Podcast. Maybe you go out and watch some videos or get some audio from thought leaders on growth, such as Dr. John Maxwell. Maybe you have a friend or a colleague, family member who is a little further along in the journey than you are, and you just sit down and have a conversation. Say, hey, I heard these 2 guys saying that I need to be intentional about my growth. Now here's what they said. What are your thoughts? We are not here to be an end all be all. We're just here to remind you, as Robin has said, of some things that you probably already know. If you are the caliber of individual to sit here and to hang out with Robin and I, we know that you are a cut above, or your desire is to join the ranks of the elite few and to leave the mediocre many. So we want to make sure that your focus is much like our focus had to be at some pivotal times in our lives where we had to move from accidental growth to intentional growth. Robin, anything that you have for the people before we cut out of here, sir?
Sir, can I bring it home with this? I want to encourage our readers to look at your calendar and see how much time, look over the next 12 months and see how much time that you have scheduled for growth. And the chances are you might not have many times scheduled. And what I want to encourage you to do is to rework your calendar to where what we're suggesting that you do is you have an appointment with yourself every day, 5 days a week for your personal growth. So you're going to put schedule in your calendar every day, 5 days a week for personal growth, an hour a day. And how you grow, it's up to you. Could be reading, could be listening. As Neal said, there are different ways that we can grow. But the important part there is to schedule it. So we want to encourage you to schedule personal growth for every day, 5 days a week. And you might say, I don't have the time for that. Well, what we're suggesting is to do it anyway, right? You make the time. It might mean waking up a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
or it might mean going to bed a little bit later, or it might mean taking some of your lunchtime, or it might mean taking that time from somewhere else or something else that you're doing. What we're suggesting is that if you want success, you need to have a growth plan and you need to have an appointment with yourself on a daily basis in order to grow. It needs to be a daily thing. And that might be new to you. We challenge you. We challenge you to try it. And when I say try it, I'm saying give it a year of where you have an appointment with yourself every day, 5 days a week for 50 weeks. And you do that, and I guarantee you're going to be coming back and you're going to be meeting your goals, and you're going to be coming back and thanking us for challenging you with that. And you're going to become a better person, and you're going to start making the things happen in your life that you want to see happen in your life. So that would be my challenge, Neal.
Thank you so much for that, Robin. Now, here's how Robin and I want to leave you as we always do. We first want to thank you for hanging out with us for this episode. We do not take it lightly. Second, we want to make sure that you have identified someone in your life that you want to help intentionally grow. Send this episode to them, send this show to them, put it on their radar so that they can be indebted to you for being a part of their intentional growth plan. We would love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. But then most importantly, make sure that you subscribe to the Big Life Podcast on whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on so that you don't miss a episode. It's going to be that important. And then Robin and I, as always, want to remind you that we love you, God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're here for you and we're right here with you. Take care.